It's pretty wild when you think about it. How a simple object, a little mechanical device for telling time, can end up being worth as much as a mansion or a whole fleet of supercars. So how is that even possible? Well, that's what we're going to dig into. Okay, get this, $17.8 million. Back in 2017, that was the final price for one single wristwatch.
And here's the crazy part. It's not made of some rare meteorite, it hasn't been to the moon, and it's not covered in priceless diamonds. So what on earth is the story behind a price tag like that?
To get to the bottom of that price, you've got to understand the story, and that story starts with this guy, and this very specific watch, Paul Newman's Rolex Daytona. What's so amazing is that this legendary watch didn't start its life as some crazy collectible. Nope, it was a simple, personal gift from his wife, Joanne Woodward. She paid just a few $100 for it, and it was meant to be a tool for his new passion.
She had this really sweet, maybe a little worried message engraved on the back. It was all about his love for motor racing, a passion that was getting more and more serious. And listen, this is the key thing to get. He wasn't some paid brand ambassador like we see today. This wasn't a prop for a movie. The man was the real deal, and he was using this watch exactly where it belonged, on the racetrack. I mean, think about it. He starts racing professionally at 43 years old, comes in second at the legendary Le Mans, and he's still winning races at 70. He really used this Daytona the way it was meant to be used, like a little computer on his wrist to time his laps. He'd often leave the pushers, the buttons that start and stop the timer, unscrewed so he could use them in an instant. This watch was a true extension of his authentic passion.
But Paul Newman's story? That's just one piece of this giant puzzle. To really get it, we need to rewind, go all the way back to the beginning, to the story of Hans Wilsdorf, the man who created Rolex.
So this guy, Wilsdorf, was an orphan at 12, but he had this incredible vision. In an era when everyone had these bulky pocket watches, he bet everything on the wristwatch, and he was completely obsessed with making them precise. By 1914, his watches were hitting a level of accuracy that used to be only for marine chronometers, the most precise instruments of the time. Oh, and the name Rolex? He always said it was whispered to him by a genie on a bus. How about that?
And this next part is where you see he wasn't just a watchmaker, he was a marketing genius. He didn't just tell people his watches were tough, he proved it. He gave his new waterproof Oyster watch to a swimmer about to cross the English Channel. When she came out of the icy water over 10 hours later and the watch was working perfectly, boom, he took out a full-page ad. He wasn't just selling a watch, he was selling a story of resilience.
And that strategy, proving a watch's worth out in the real world, became Rolex's calling card. The watches became synonymous with adventure because, well, they were literally built for it. So let's look at two icons. You've got the Daytona, purpose-built for the racetrack. Then you've got the Submariner. From 1953, the first dive watch that was water-resistant to 100 meters. It became the choice for real-life explorers like Jacques Cousteau, and yeah, even fictional icons like James Bond. This is what cemented their identity. They were tools first and luxury items second.
But the brand's identity wasn't just forged in adventure. It was also forged in adversity. And this is honestly one of the most remarkable stories in the company's whole history.
So picture this. It's World War II. Hans Wilsdorf makes this incredible offer to Allied prisoners of war. He says, order a Rolex now, from inside the prison camp, and you can pay for it after you're free. I mean, what a gamble, right? He was betting on an Allied victory. For those men in those camps, getting a high-precision Swiss watch, wow, it was more than a timepiece. It was a symbol of resilience, a belief in a future beyond the barbed wire.
So you've got this foundation of authenticity, innovation, and serious historical weight. Now let's see how all of that comes together to transform one specific watch, the Daytona, from an unpopular flop into an absolute legend.
Believe it or not, the Daytona, specifically the one with this exotic dial, was a total flop. Back in the 60s and 70s, it just sat on shelves. Some dealers apparently refused to even take them in on a trade because they were that unpopular.
But you know what happens when an unpopular item is produced in small numbers? It becomes rare. So, in the 1980s, these really savvy Italian collectors who were passionate about mechanical chronographs started hunting them down. They recognized their unique style and their scarcity.
And when you combine that newfound rarity with the effortless cool of its most famous wearer, Paul Newman, that ugly duckling transforms into an icon. The collectors themselves nicknamed it the Paul Newman Daytona, and right then, a legend was born.
And Rolex continues this tradition of going the extra mile, even in its materials. In the 80s, they switched to 940L steel. Now, this stuff is harder to machine and more expensive than the industry standard, but it has a unique shine and it's got slightly better corrosion resistance.
So is it a dramatically better material for a watch case? That's debatable. But as one observer noted, that's not really the point. The choice to use this special steel isn't just a technical decision, it's a branding decision. It adds another chapter to the story of Rolex's uncompromising quality.
Okay, let's bring it all home. We've got the man, the brand, the history, and the rarity. So why did that one specific watch sell for nearly $18 million?
Because the winning bidder wasn't just buying a watch, they were buying every single story we just talked about. They bought a tangible connection to Paul Newman, the real-life racer. They bought the legacy of Hans Wilsdorf's genius. They bought the story of the ugly duckling that became a legend, and a piece of a brand forged in the English Channel and WWI prison camps.
And that is the ultimate takeaway. That $17.8 million bid wasn't just for a watch that tells time. It was for an object that holds time. A moment, a history, a legacy. It just proves that the most valuable things in the world aren't just things, they're stories.